Hello everyone. I don't know what has happened to Kushi. Come here. Why it is coming so hazy like that? Something is wrong. 1 second. I'm just fixing it. What is it? Create a room by inviting others to broadcast with you. I don't know. I don't want that. 1 second. I'm having some trouble here. Next. Next. Okay. I'm so sorry, I was having some trouble. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Intunes after long gap. So today is World Autism Awareness Day, and my Intunes today is dedicated to that. As not many of us know, like around 1 to 1.5% of the children in the age group of 2 to 9 years are affected by autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Hello Manish Singh, hello Moshmi. Okay, so let me complete whatever I'm saying. Today is World Autism Awareness Day, and not many of us are aware that around 1 to 1.5% of the children in the age group of 2 to 9 years are affected by autism spectrum disorder ASD. Around 10% of school going children have been diagnosed with mild to severe learning challenges. A major reason for the delay in diagnosis is because the condition is often misinterpreted as mental retardation or even schizophrenia. With the rapid advancement in technology, in depth medical research is being carried out to determine the causes responsible for ASD. So, my today's episode is dedicated to spread awareness about autism, and for that, my guest today is Anima Nair, director and co founder of Sense Kaleidoscope. Sense Kaleidoscope is a unit of IATI Trust, and it is the first art school for autism in India in Bangalore. Sense Kaleidoscope believes in the power of autism and power of possibilities. Autistic children can learn when they are taught in the way that is meaningful to them. Employability and even self sustainability are viable options when training is imparted, keeping the strength of the children in mind. Every child, every youngster, every adult has strengths. Tailoring learning to enhance strengths and mitigate the impact of weaknesses. That is what education is all about, and that is all we are going to talk with Anima. So, in tunes with Anima Nair, let me add Anima. Give me a moment. Center invite. Hi, Dr. Aradhana. Anima, not able to see you. Hi, Anima. Welcome to Intune.
Hi, hi. Thank you for having me.
Great. It's an honor. It's a privilege to have you, Anima, so that we can spread some awareness. So let's start without wasting any time. Let's start and let's begin with understanding what is autism. So what exactly is autism? Because people have their own interpretation of autism. So we want to know the facts and misunderstandings around it.
Absolutely. So, autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So, to put it in very simple terms, it is like your brain's wiring is different from what is considered to be normal. So in a neurodevelopmental disorder, you have a lot of challenges, a lot of what can you say, atypical things that happen that are not considered normal. Like I keep saying, like for instance, some of the symptoms that of autism are that there are communication challenges. There is difficulty with sensory stimulation. So you have sensory processing disorders. You have difficulty making social connects, peer group connects. You have emotional regulation issues. And all of these things are part of the autism spectrum disorder. There are also comorbidities like having seizures and having mental health issues like schizophrenia and bipolar. So it's a complex condition and it is a very wide spectrum condition. So you can have two people with autism presenting it very differently, which is why we say this is not a disease, there is no cure for it. This is a condition of the brain, this is a type of brain, and we believe that um, this kind of brain adds to our diversity, which is why right now you hear a lot of talk about neurodiversity and neurodivergence and so on. So, in short, autism is considered to be a neurodevelopmental disorder, but we can also treat it as simply a different kind of brain and therefore a different way of being and living life. And if we can accept that and we put in interventions and support systems that help our children and adults with autism, then we will start seeing changes. If we chase cures and try to solve the problem like that, that's not going to happen. So that's autism for you.
So, like, what are the limitations or strength of someone having autism? And one more thing I want to add is, are different people with autism having, different degrees of, is there any, like, someone is having autism or degree? It can be, is it like that? Uh, Maybe I'm not able
Yeah.
to put my question in a right way.
Right. So yes, it is a spectrum disorder, which means you have different levels of functioning. Some people on the spectrum will have a very high level of functioning, and some people will have a very low level of functioning. Now, I'm not using these labels to put anybody down. I'm just trying to explain to you as a layperson how it turns out. So, when you have a spectrum of functioning, that means you have a spectrum of support needs. When you say high functioning child with autism, does not mean that their life is easy. It means that maybe their communication is easier, their adaptability, less rigidity, like, you can change their routines and there won't be a meltdown or a tantrum. That's what we mean by, higher functioning. But that does not mean that they don't need support. They need a different kind of support. They need counseling, they need behavior therapy, they need a lot of support for them to accept that my brain is different from somebody else's. Now, if it's a lower functioning child, then that person will need support all through their life with life skills, with hygiene, with everything. So we have an entire spectrum where you can have children who need support all their life, and you can have children who grow up to be adults who can become independent to like 80, 90%, and so on. So that's why it's called a spectrum.
So, and do you know, people, are there people with autism who can live independently on their own? They can.
Yes, I mean, with some support, why not? Because in India, that's you don't hear such stories. But in the West, in countries that have had interventions in place for many years, in those kind of places, they already have assisted living systems for people with autism. There are people who have Asperger's, which is like the highest functioning end of autism. People with Asperger's can live independently. They get married, they have children. All of these things are just not even an option for our children here, for most of our children here who have autism, because we don't even get to that stage, unfortunately. So it's not that autism is the problem here. It is the fact that we are letting autism become a bigger disability than it needs to be. That is the problem.
So the main thing is awareness. creating awareness is very, very important in India?
Well, awareness is one thing. I mean, knowing about autism is one thing, but what do you do after you know about it? Do you accept autism? Do you appreciate autism? Do you work with autism in a fruitful manner? That is the question. You may be aware that there is a person who is acting odd. You may not call it autism or whatever. But the truth is that after you are aware of it, what will you do? That's the question that we have to ask, right? The point that I'm trying to make here is that awareness is good as a first step. But if it does not move on to other steps, then nothing gets done on the ground. We can just keep talking about it. We will not see action happening. We will not see change happening. So awareness is an important step, but it's not the only thing that we have to focus on. We have to build on that and then get on to acceptance and making systems more accessible for people with autism and so on. We have to start with education and we have to end with employment. We have a long way to go when it comes to dealing with autism in this country.
So yeah, so the main, my second question was like, what are the limitations and strengths of someone having autism?
Limitations and strengths you were asking. Sorry, my
Yeah.
some someone keeps trying to call me, so it's getting cut. So basically, yes, this okay for strengths. Now, you have to understand that this brain is wired differently, like I was saying. So it has several strengths, like very strong focus on an activity and for long periods of time. Then attention to detail. So this tendency to be perfect in what you're doing. And then you have like if you're talking about hiring people with autism in the workspace, for instance, you will have very less redundancy. They'll be very loyal. They'll be very reliable. So all of these qualities are there, and also they're very bad at lying. They cannot lie. They're very straightforward. What you see is what you get with a person who has autism. So the straightforward approach, the fact that they're not going to cheat you, they're not going to do anything negative like that. There are people who, if you give them a chance, they will do their best. So very hardworking. All of these traits are there for autism. And the weaknesses are what happens when you're, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. If your body and your mind are completely disconnected, how would you feel? You would feel like an alien, right, in this body. Like, I want to do something, but that connection is not working between my body and my brain, and I'm not able to do those things the way I want to do it. So even if supposing I'm feeling a great deal of love for you at this point, somebody with autism may not show it on their face because the connection between the ability to express and your ability to think about that and feel that emotion, that connection might be lost. So the kind of challenges that they face, they're enormous. It's the sensory processing difficulty alone is very difficult to handle. Like, some people cannot deal with soft touch. Some people want a lot of, like, high pressure touch to feel their body. Some kids cannot deal with any kind of noise. Some kids cannot deal with fluorescent lights or any kind of flickering lights. They might get a seizure. So there's a lot of sensory processing issues that they have to deal with. Then the communication itself is impacted very greatly by the nature of autism itself. And then we tend to make it worse because we don't provide the right kind of education and training to the child at a small age itself. Then, when the child grows, at the age of 12, he might have the cognition of a 6-year-old. This is going to make communication very difficult. So, all of these challenges are there. Some of them are inherent in autism, and some of them we have made really bad by not giving support early enough and in the right way. So these are the strengths and weaknesses we're dealing with on a daily basis in school, at SK, where we have so many children coming every day.
So, Anima, like we normally see people talk about inclusion, diversity in CSR, and when you meet friends, they talk about we should be inclusive in schools also, or in CSR activities in boardrooms. But is inclusion actually happening? What do you think? What is your take on that?
Do you want an honest answer or a politically correct answer? Because I can
Honest,
go either.
honest answer.
Uh, Honestly, I feel that inclusion, neurodiversity, all of that are being used as buzzwords right now. Just to say, to tick a box, I'm being inclusive. What does it mean at the ground level to be inclusive? Being inclusive means you are accommodating the needs of someone whose neurological wiring is different from yours. You're accommodating the needs of someone, you're allowing them to work the way they can work by giving them those kind of support systems. Inclusive doesn't mean just like in schools, they might have one child in the class with a shadow teacher, and then the child will be pulled out and pulled in. These things are not in general just inclusion. For inclusion to be meaningful, then this child also should learn, and this child should have the choice of coming and joining the other children when and if he or she is ready. So it's not just about ticking the box. When it comes to the workplace, if we are not willing to make the kind of accommodations right from the time of interviewing, they may not be comfortable with a face-to-face interview. Will you make some other, accommodations? They may need, a change in light fixtures. Are you willing to do that? They may need some initial hand holding. They may need a job coach, a mentor for a while. You may need to be sensitized to their needs. Are people willing to go the whole way and do all of those things? Because if you do all of those things and you stop treating somebody with autism as someone who is less than you, because they need more time maybe to process your question, or because they may flap their hands when they're trying to calm themselves down, depending on the person. So there are so many um, things we can do to make another human being accepted and loved and welcome. And if we don't do any of those things, then inclusion is meaningless.
So, Anima, I see. I mean, in schools, they have kids who have autism. So, is this right? What do you say? I mean, because lots of people say that they should have right to education to go to general school, which is open for everyone. So they should go to those school. So what do you think? Is that approach right, or they should have a school for them where they are taught in a manner in which uh, 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 they are taught in the correct manner, which should be done. I mean, which is right for them. What do you think?
So the thing is, to be honest, in India, schools are not equipped to deal with proper inclusion at the moment. They can be equipped, but right now they're not. So if you, as a parent of children of a child with autism, so I have a 21-year-old son with autism. I know plenty of parents who have kids with autism. And I know that in the beginning, everybody tried to put their child in the mainstream, even though they knew that the child was struggling. And they did that just because of social stigma. What do I tell my neighbors? What do I tell my in laws? What do I tell my parents? I can't tell them I'm sending to a special school, right? I mean, it's embarrassing for people. So they all try the mainstream route. But if the child doesn't receive that kind of training and the kind of support that he or she needs, then this gap that I've been talking about starts to build. And also, you can't expect a child who has all of these sensory difficulties to sit in a noisy classroom with 30 other children, one teacher trying to pay attention to how many other children she can. Even with a support teacher, this is going to be a very difficult situation. So I think that if a conventional school wants to open its doors to somebody with autism, they have to create a special facility within their school, and then bring the children together for extracurricular activities, for any other activities that they choose. Or if a child who is really good in one subject wants to join the mainstream class for that subject, then get them in. It has to be something like that. Current scenarios don't support all of these mechanisms. And if you have a school dedicated to autism like I do, then the good thing about it is we are creating the right kind of nurturing environment for them. We are not judging them. If you want to scream, you scream. There will be a consequence for that. You will be taught why it's not nice to scream and other children are getting upset. But that's it. We are not going to judge the child. We are not going to suspend the child. We are not going to make the child feel so bad for being who he is. That we won't do. And we will start training the child in a way that they can understand. Our teacher-student ratio is 1:3 or 1:4. So we have academic programs and art programs. We keep the children in very small groups. They like the groups because they like the peer interaction and so on. But we don't put them in bigger classrooms because that's how you see results. Every child is different, and the teacher has to change on the fly. Like, how do I teach this concept to this child when this child is not picking up? How do I, change my approach? These things we can do only in a school that is dedicated for autism. We cannot expect this to be done in a mainstream school. So as a parent and as an educator myself, I would say that the community, we're talking about society, we're talking about public spaces. They have all of that has to be made more accessible to children with autism. We need to allow them to be in those places without being judged, right? And without being pointed at or made fun of. But for schooling, if the right kind of training with the right kind of curriculum, mind you, because it does not make sense to teach all sorts of random subjects to a child with autism. It has to be meaningful. There has to be an outcome. There has to be a future prospect. So with the right kind of curriculum, with the right kind of structure, with the right kind of support that the children need, if you can do that, fine, go to a conventional school. If that is not on offer, do not traumatize the child by making him go through something that is going to really backfire later on. So I know all of this now. When I was a younger parent, I did not know because at that time there wasn't that much of information about autism, or there wasn't a roadmap as such for somebody like me. Right now, when I tell parents, and a lot of parents come and say, but I want them to be with normal kids. I tell them normalcy is not contagious and neither is autism. What you're supposed to do is put the child in a room with somebody else who will understand them rather than with children who are going to find it difficult to understand and accept the child. For social things, definitely bring all sorts of children together, no problem. That's a great way to bond. But for learning, when I have so much difficulty listening, sitting there, I can't make eye contact, and I'm asked to sit for 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever amount of time, and I have to learn also after battling all these difficulties. How is that possible for someone with autism? We have to understand what they can do and what they cannot do, and we should change the way we teach them to accommodate their strengths. And only then will education of any kind be meaningful. So to me, if a conventional school can do all that, great, go for it. But otherwise, we need to create environments that are especially crafted for our children's needs. Otherwise, we will not see the kind of learning impact that we need to see.
Right. So, how did you come up with this idea to open Sense Kaleidoscope?
Well, that's a bit of a story. So I was going from school to school trying to figure out, because I had this very cute, bubbly son who's like, I mean, he was absolutely adorable. He loved people, he was so naughty. His eyes were sparkly and all of that. And yet, this child struggled so much. I didn't know when I first put him in a school why he went crying, why he came back crying. Now, when I look back on it a few years later, I realized it's a noise that bothered him. It's very sound sensitive. He used to have silent seizures, and I didn't know it because you won't see it from outside, right? I didn't know any of these things. Then when I went from there to a nursery school, then more schools and all that, and people started telling me only that your son can't do this or your son can't do that, and I saw this bubbly, bright kid, withdraw and go into a shell and become a shadow of his former self. That's when it broke my heart because I thought I'm not able to help my child at all. And finally, I put him in a special school, and that also was not helping because there was a mix of, it just was there wasn't enough focus on each child for anything positive to happen, unfortunately, and nobody was working with comprehension. And for me, if you're not working with comprehension, you'll never crack this problem that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis with autism. So after that, I met my co-founder purely by accident in that school. We hit it off, and she said, "You know what? Do you want to start a space for autism? Nobody's doing this kind of stuff. Let's do it." I said, "Okay." I wasn't very sure in the beginning, and then I said, and then I thought about it, and I was thinking of all the kids. I know a lot of parents, and they all have the same story. I thought, why not? I mean, if parents don't step up and support professionals who want to make a difference, and how are we going to see any change here? So that's how we started it in 2000, end of 2012, and officially started in 2013. And that's how we come a long way. So my partner Akshay and I, we're the ones who run it. And we basically like, we wear many hats. We try everything. And I believe that we've created a really beautiful space for autism. And I'm very happy and proud that we got the opportunity to do that. So.
Yeah, really nice. So, in SK, what all programs do you offer
We
in
have academic program for the younger children, and we have a vocational art program, which is a professional art skilling program. And that is what we're famous for. We're famous for our art, which like we have our kids do fantastic art. The reason why we also have an academic program is we realized when we were starting off with teaching art that our kids are they might be able to pick up on the skill, but they won't be able to sustain it without understanding everything that goes around it. If you don't understand money, if you don't understand why you have to do this work and what is the future of this, if that comprehension is not built in, then the vocation program will ultimately fail. It will not be sustainable in the long run. So we went back and tried to pick up younger children and we started fixing the comprehension gaps. And that is why now we start taking kids at the age of 6 and 7, where before when we started, we used to take from the age of 12 upwards. And the art program and the academic program, they are the larger umbrellas. Under the art program, we have a visual art program. We have a print program, which is screen print, linoprint, monoprint. And we have a pottery and ceramics program. We are now starting a theater program soon. And we would like to even open up our pottery space. So for people all, in that area to come by and learn pottery, spend some time with our kids, get the feeling of what it's like, to be a part of a school like this. I think if people interact more with our children, that fear of what is autism and that not knowing how to behave towards a child with autism, I think all of that will go. So wherever I go, I keep telling people, come and visit us. Our children like it so much. They're so happy when people come and, say, just come and say hi and then tell them that their art is great. They're so proud and happy when visitors do that. So yes, it's open invitation that I'm giving all of you, including you, Neetu. Please do stop by sometime.
I will definitely come. So, yeah. So, in SK, you are offering art programs. So, why did you think of starting School of Art when you saw nobody else was doing? How did you get this idea?
Um, well, honestly, I am a tech person, okay, by background. I'm software engineer by background, like most people in Bangalore, but I love to write. My expertise is not in art at all. But my partner, she is an expert she was a digital artist. She's a graduate of Glasgow School of Art, and she's also worked with autism. So she brought in the art idea because there have been many studies, and you can go back and check on it, about how people with autism have a naturally creative bent, how arts is a very strong interest with most of the people on the spectrum. And because of that, and also the fact that art is a very accepting medium, right? There is no right or wrong when it comes to art. It's not like science and math and stuff like that. So because of all of that, we realize that it's not only the fact that we have to teach art that is a bit of a challenge. We also have to convince parents that this is a good way forward. People were not understanding the possibilities of art. I did not understand the possibilities of art because you know what, in India, everybody is like, you have to be doing science or math or be an engineer or a doctor. There's no thought about, can my child do this? At least, at that time. Now, I think conventional thoughts are changing a little bit. So it was Akshay who came up with the idea of introducing the art program, starting with the art program, in fact. And she's created a very structured autism specific art curriculum. which works beautifully with our children. And that's how we see the success stories. We've made art learning accessible for the children. Whatever barriers there are, we take it off. If there's a difficulty, we solve that difficulty for the child, and we never let the learning stop. So because of that, the artworks that they've created, they've gone all over the place. They went to the Kochi Biennale in a show that was supported by the Biennale Foundation. They went to Paris in the Outsider Art Fair. We've had numerous shows in Bangalore. They are going to be up in the NGMA, Delhi, for this Autism Awareness Month. They're having a program. So we have multiple things, multiple avenues for our children to showcase their artwork. And now people have started to believe that it is a sustainable practice. You not only showcase the art, you can sell the art, you can merchandise the art. We've had Lifestyle offering women's wear, men's wear, and home center designs based on our children's artwork. So they got paid for using those designs pan India. So this was not just a Bangalore thing. It went across. It's in every store. If you go to home center now, you'll still see a placard, a huge one with 3 kids' images and their artworks there. And the story of SKs is there prominently in the home center stores even now. So all of those things are possibilities that parents did not know. I think even society didn't know. And corporates have been very interested in supporting us by buying our artworks and so on. This is a model that works. And though the idea seemed to me very strange in the beginning, when I started learning more about it, and I was also working on the floor initially, that's when I saw the transformation, those success stories building slowly. And, when we hit the stage with those success stories, people were really astonished. How could you do this? We've even had, we used to, record videos of our children working, because some people even said, such beautiful artworks. Is it possible that somebody with autism can do it? And then we say, we have the proof. Like, you can see this child. He may not be able to talk. He may not be able to look at you, but he can draw. He can paint. So, yeah. This was.
Wow. And they might be having that happy feeling when they got paid, when they got recognized, appreciated.
Yeah, yeah.
They might have
Absolutely.
felt so nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really,
So, and
really.
we had this TV9 came and interviewed us and the children. They were so excited and they saw themselves on TV, and then they were like, "Oh my God, I'm on TV, I'm famous," and it was so cute. And then
Oh,
kids who don't draw also in our space said, "Okay, I also want to draw because I want to become famous, and now everybody will know my name," and things like. So much excitement when they get recognized, and it's only their right. I mean, we were part of an exhibition recently at CKP, and all the students, including my son, they were so happy to go out and like interact with people. Some children choose not to do it because they find it difficult with their sensory challenges, but the children who want to talk. Like, I call them children, but now they're like young adults, absolutely going around meeting everybody and saying, come, let me explain to you how I did this and all that. So it was a big
that's
hit with the kids.
that's awesome. Really awesome. So, my next question, like every child has some or the other talent or strength. So, how do you find in a child what interests he has or what skills that child has that can be enhanced and trained and that could be helpful for him for employment or self-sustainability? So, how do you find out from a child, from inside a child?
So basically, since we're an art space, when it comes to vocational stuff, we're an art space. So we do an assessment to see if the child is interested in art. And there are ways in which you can do it. Our art team will work with them. We have another outside counselor who checks, and I mean, she's not a counselor, she's an expert with assessment. So she tells us whether this child is vocation ready. There are two things: vocation ready, and then our team goes ahead and assesses to see if this child enjoys doing art. Because for us, our place is a happy space. We cannot take in a child who is upset when he's doing art, like whether if there is a sensory disturbance, like if they don't want to touch paints, or they don't want to touch, let's say, clay for pottery, or they don't simply get upset while doing this work when they're unhappy. We cannot take in children like that because we want to help the child. So our assessment allows us to see which child has an inclination in the art, and then we take that child and we hone their strengths till it reaches this professional level. So that's how we work. We do not, like for instance, we don't take in children who want to do music because we don't have the expertise with music, and we don't have anyone collaborating with us for music or something like that, right? Or dance for that matter. Our expertise is art, and we stick to that. And when we assess a child, that's what we have in mind. That is the child interested and is he happy doing this? I keep saying he because mostly we have boys, because autism does affect more boys than girls. We do have a few girls, but automatically in my thing, I don't mean just, I don't mean to be patriarchal. It can be he or she. So either way, yeah. That's how we assess in our space and get our programs aligned with the child's interests.
Okay.
A lot of observation goes behind this. Like if we see
Mm.
someone interested in trains, then we use trains in very creative ways to bring out more interest and obsessions in the child regarding the train. And then when we do artworks that are in the theme, if it's trains, then that child is very interested in working because hey, this is something I like. And then the motivation is, it just flows. With autism, external motivation never works. If you can build that intrinsic motivation, that's when you have cracked the problem.
So, on a daily basis, you might be facing challenges. So, any challenges you face on a daily basis?
But plenty. What sort of challenges do you want to know about? Like I said, with autism, there are certain challenges that come because they don't understand the environment around them to the extent that they have to. So if there is something like, for instance, like the pandemic, it was very upsetting to our children. Our school is the only space they can come to and be themselves, right? So when that was stopped for them, though we continued online and they couldn't see their friends and they couldn't chat with them, they couldn't eat lunch with them, and all outings were stopped. They got anxiety. Like a lot of our children started developing anxiety. Anyway, anxiety is a common part of autism spectrum disorder, but their anxiety levels started to shoot up. Some children even started showing signs of depression. So, what I'm trying to say is it is challenging when understanding of the world is not built in and we have to deal with situations like this. It's not only people with autism who had anxiety and depression during pandemic, or a lot of children were showing symptoms of that. But it was worse in these children because they simply did not understand why all of this uncertainty was happening in their lives. Autism by itself is chaotic. This is why we have an outside structure imposed on them. We build routines. We are very clear with the structure. We'll explain to the child if a teacher hasn't come today and that somebody else will be taking class. We make it clear, way in advance. While we allow them to stick to schedules, we also try to introduce a little bit of change so that they don't get too upset when change happens. All of this is necessary because the world doesn't make sense to them. If we don't impose structure and clarity, and something that they can count on, consistency, if they know what to expect in the next 5 to 10 minutes or half an hour, then the behavior starts becoming like much easier to manage. If you're stuck in a country where people don't understand your language, they refuse to hear you, and they keep on telling you to do something which is very difficult for you and you don't even understand what they're saying, imagine how you would feel. It's pretty much like that with autism.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of these were some of the challenges that we faced, and now we have other challenges like my boys want to have girlfriends. Okay, they have the dreams of just going out on a date, and sometimes they don't have family support to do that, and sometimes it's just so difficult to figure out how can we make this possible for our youngsters. Like it's normal, right, to want to have a girlfriend when you're 17 and 18 and all that, and yet they are struggling because they just don't get a chance to meet girls, and then obviously they're feeling very bad about it. They're feeling they lose their confidence. So we have even those kind of issues that we deal with, a whole spectrum of challenges that happen. But honestly, a lot of these would go away if we just had more support. That's what I feel. Like I had one of, I'm just going to give an example of, in Bangalore, my son cannot cross a road. I keep talking about this. But when we were in Singapore, when he was 12 or 13, in no time he knew how to cross a road independently, because you can just press the pedestrian signal and you cross it when you see the green man walking. I mean, it's an automated system, right? You just press it and go. It's there in all the countries, but it's not there in a city like Bangalore. How is he supposed to cross a road when there are no rules? You need rules and structure for a child or for an adult also with autism to function. How is he supposed to look 4, 5 directions? That kind of processing speed is not there for them. So he was independent. He would swipe his card, get on the metro or the train or whatever that was called. I forgot the name of the train system, but whatever. So he could get on the trains, he could get on the buses. It was the same card you needed to swipe. So basically, and he could remember which stop he needed to go to. This was, at the age of 30. And now at the age of 21, he cannot do any of those things in Bangalore. It's not his fault. It's a fact that there is nothing like that over here that allows him to become independent. So we have to start thinking about policy level changes and about infrastructure level changes. If you have someone who is physically challenged, they cannot walk, and you don't provide a ramp, that person is going to be disabled in the worst possible way. But if they have a wheelchair, they have ramps everywhere in public spaces, wherever they want to go, they will not feel disabled, right? They get to do what everyone else gets to do. Why are we making things worse and not fighting for our children in this country when it comes to autism or any other disability? That's a question I want to ask to everyone, because it's Autism Awareness Day. Why aren't we asking the tough questions? And why aren't we expecting the government to do more and even other organizations to do more? There's a lot that private enterprises also can do to make this possible, right? To make autism a little bit more bearable, to make disability a little bit more bearable. So,
Right questions you're asking, and people should think about it. Government should think about it. Government should do something about it. So, would you like to share something more about your son?
um, yeah, well, he loves to travel. And he absolutely, I think I have yet to see a more kind soul. So he's very empathetic. If he thinks somebody's hungry, he'll bring them home and say, "Amma, give them dinner." Okay, he will constantly, if somebody's sick, he gets very upset. He'll start to take care of them. Uh, he thinks like if you just have a guest, he'll immediately go to the kitchen. He'll blend his own, version of juice and he'll serve it to them. He's such a kind and loving person. I just wish that as he grows older, he will have a community around him, because isolation is the worst possible way for a human being to exist. I remember there was this, incident in the school much earlier when we were just starting, and we had a child who was really struggling. He could not speak. He was about 15 or 16 when he came to us, and he was aggressive only because he couldn't speak and nobody could understand at that time. So he had just come in. It was just maybe a couple of weeks since he came in. We were still working with him and trying to see what will work and what wouldn't. And Pranav loves people, right? So he will go and hug everybody. That's his thing, he goes and hugs people. So then this child was having a very difficult day. He started screaming, and he was on the terrace, and the teachers were a little afraid to approach him because he was getting, very agitated. And then this little fellow just runs over there and sits next to, like, he goes close to him and he starts patting him like that, because he has no fear. He only has love towards that person. And I thought that this kid is going to be picked up and thrown off the terrace or something. We were terrified, standing there thinking, how are we going to help? But he's just the response, that instead we are looking at this child with fear because we don't know what is going to happen. Pranav doesn't have that. He just looks at people with love. And you should see the transformation that happens. Everyone who's called him, "You're slow," or made fun of him or anything like that, in the face of his relentless love, they have changed. So for me, he continues to be an inspiration. In whatever the world throws at you, if you never stop loving it back, I'm pretty sure that good things will happen to him and children like him. At least, that's my hope.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And do you want to share about someone from SK, any child from SK, anything about someone,
Yeah,
any incident or any story, anything of Sense Kaleidoscope, any child of Sense
yeah. I mean,
Kaleidoscope?
all of our children have, all of our children who come, they have their own stories. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you about one of our first success stories. So this guy, child, he was a teenager. He came to us when he was 15, and the parents told us. On the mother was very, active. So she told us that he was written off by all the professionals. They said he couldn't do anything. He was going to a school that was putting him in ninth grade, but he was doing basic stuff. He wasn't actually doing the academics. They just kept moving him from grade to grade. Though his cognition was sitting at the 6 year old's level. So he's 15 years old with the understanding and comprehension of 6 year old. And when we first saw him, he was just rolling on the floor. And this is a hefty child, about 100 kilos, um, quite a hefty child. So I was looking at him and I was thinking, what can we do? How can we help him? He's not sitting down, he's just rolling on the floor. So my partner Akshay said, we'll figure it out. So then we started working with him. And you won't believe it. I don't know from where she got this wonderful idea, but she figured out that after a lot of attempts and a lot of days of where he was just allowed to play and have fun and all, for him to start liking us and building that rapport, she figured out that this kid, though he is a large sized child, his touch was actually very soft. So the reason why he couldn't hold a pencil and he couldn't write and he couldn't do stuff like that, or he was refusing to do it, was because none of those things were, suitable for him. So she found this really, I mean, it's a art sort of a pen, something that architects and all use. It's a very fine nib. I can't use it because I find it too finicky. We just gave that to him, and in no time at all, he started picking up the skills of drawing with that pen. And when he joined us, about 10 months later, he was only doing 2 hours a day with us. 10 months later, we put a show with him as the star. He put 50 artworks over there, and he sold 90% of those art. In 10 months, from going to somebody everybody had written off to somebody who earned money out of his own effort. That for me is a success story. And the biggest success is the way the father's view of him changed. Initially, he was like, very detached. But when he started seeing the change in his son, he turned around and became one of our biggest supporters because he felt that this was actual impact, something that the parents had never seen in their life. And yeah, for me, that's always the story I'll carry in my heart.
That's really amazing. Actually, these are the stories, success stories people should know, and parents who have an autistic child should know and should uh, think about enrolling their kid in this kind of institutions, right? Rather than sending them where I mean, they are misunderstood. So, the last question, moving on to the last question. Do you have any expectations from corporate firms in regards to employment or any kind of help that could be done through them?
I have a a long list. I'm just going to tell you a couple of them. So I'm really happy that there is this whole, movement towards neurodiversity that's happening. That's great. But I would request corporates to connect with the right people to guide them on how to do this. Because unless you work with autism, nobody can tell you how to make your space autism friendly or neurodivergent friendly or whatever it is. That's one request. The other thing is when corporates are asking where do we get the neurodivergent folks, the autistic folks to employ them, the answer is that with this kind of an education system in place, it's very difficult to find somebody who goes through it successfully and then becomes employable. So I would request corporates to invest in the training to help build curricula. Supposing you want to hire someone as a software tester, help us build the curriculum. We have the expertise to do that. We just need to know what you want in an employee, and then we can bridge that gap. So I would like corporates to come and help us in the training sector so that we can start rolling out this program and let children become employable. If we don't help them become inclusion ready, if we don't help them become employable, they will not have any way to, tick off that neurodiversity box either. Right? So it's very important to not forget that there is a huge gap between where everyone wants things to be and where things really are. So reality check has to happen over here. So corporates, great that they are interested in this neurodiversity inclusion paradigm, but it would be greater if they would help us train. So fund programs like that, fund research programs. We run research programs because you don't make a curriculum just like that sitting in a corner. We have an idea on how to teach a concept, we go back to the classroom, we try it out on the children. If it doesn't work, we scrap it, we come up with another idea. There's a lot of research and development going on. I would request corporates to fund that for us. Help us build more technological interventions also, because technology is our biggest friend when it comes to training. And, these are my requests. We may be a small school, but we're doing a whole lot of work. And if corporates can, not look at numbers for impact, but look at quality work being done, that would be great for us. So that's a big request sent out to our corporates.
Right. And I just hope, I mean, this video reaches as many people as it could. And I would like to conclude with two lines which I have written from your website itself. One is, there is no such thing as a child who cannot learn. Every child can learn if given a chance. And why fit in when you are born to stand out? So I
My
have
favorite.
copied it from your website. Yeah. So I just hope every child gets what he deserves. And thank you, Anima, for coming to the show. And it was really very, enlightening talking to you. And I just hope this video reaches as many people as it could. And to the viewers, I want to say, whoever are watching it or whoever watches it later, please spread possible. And thank you, Anima.
Thank
Would
you.
you like
Thank
to
you
say,
so much.
conclude by saying something? Would you like to say something before leaving?
First, I'd say thank you for giving me this opportunity to open my heart out about a topic that's really close to me. And then I would just like to request everyone who's listening that this is Autism Awareness Day, but don't let it be a token day. Don't let it be just one off. On one day, people are listening about autism and listening to the stories and helping and thinking about what are the challenges. I would request everyone to reach out to at least one person with autism, one child with autism, and see, you know, what they can do. It doesn't mean you have to help. Just be nice to someone. Go ahead and talk to them. Make them feel like they too deserve to be part of this society. That's a simple request. And if we can change our thinking by a small, a tiny little bit, just a jot. And every single day, if you see somebody who's struggling with the challenges that I've been talking about, reach out a hand and say, it's okay. Like, just not stare at somebody when they're having a bad day and they're having a meltdown. Just offer help if you can. Otherwise, just be there silently and support them. So let's not make this about one day. Can we make this kind of thinking something that we do every day? That's my request.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Neetu, for having me.
Thank you, Anima. Have a good day. Thank you, viewers.
You too.
See you. Bye.